Hi, this is George King. I'm a 77-year-old Brit living in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to my blog about my experiences living with Alzheimer's disease. I've got a big week coming up. On Wednesday, I meet with the neurologist who will be evaluating the MoCA cognitive test that I took a couple of weeks ago and figuring out a path forward for treatment and care. I also have a lot of questions myself regarding my possible continuation with the drug Leqembi or moving to Kisluna and other concerns. Then on Thursday, I've been invited to sit in on a 9-day training course for nursing home personnel titled Dementia Beyond Drugs, Changing the Culture of Care. The course is run by the Culture Change Network of Georgia and the Gerontology Institute of Georgia State University. It focuses on evolving ways to treat people living with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia with dignity and respect. Check in next week for a full report and keep on dancing. Hello, George King here with the blog Dancing with Delirium, which is my exploration of the world of dementia from the perspective of a person living with Alzheimer's disease. That would be me. Last week, Emory Brain Center neurologist Dr. Eric Johnson went over the results of the cognitive test I took a few weeks ago. He also conducted some basic physical tests, compiled a personal history with details of my education, medications, diet, interests, etc., and answered all my questions. I was surprised at the results of the memory test. He said I was in the top 10% of people taking the test. Unfortunately, a full evaluation was not possible without my medical records, which my previous neurologist had seemingly been unable to send despite the request I made 2 weeks ago. I had a lot of questions, but the main ones had positive responses. Yes, I could resume Leqembi. Yes, Kisluna is also a possibility. No, the blood thinners would not be an impediment. And there were no indications that the statins can contribute to getting Alzheimer's. The above is, of course, dependent on the results of the prior tests in my medical record. The next morning, I was on my computer in the first class of the 9-week online workshop, Dementia Beyond Drugs. The course is well organized and jammed with information and ideas, all fueled by a participatory ethic. My classmates were an interesting bunch and included at least one other person living with the disease. So this is George King signing off and saying, keep up the dancing. Hi, George King here from the blog Dancing with Delirium. You may remember that I'm enrolled in a class, Dementia Beyond Drugs, created by the Eden Alternative. Well, I wanted to share something from last week. The Eden Alternative has created a hierarchy of states or stages that support and restore well-being. They call them domains. Although this class is focused on people caring for people living with dementia, these domains clearly apply to everyone. So at the base of the pyramid, we have identity and connectedness, and the consequence of that, loneliness. Above that are security and autonomy, and the consequence of that, helplessness. Above that are meaning and growth, and the consequence is boredom. And at the top of the pyramid is joy. Let's look at these simple steps to well-being in more detail. Identity means being well known, having personhood, individuality, wholeness, having a story. Connectedness means belonging, engagement, and involvement, having close, meaningful relationships. Security means freedom from fear, anxiety and doubt, feeling safe, having privacy, dignity, and respect. Autonomy means choice and self-determination, freedom from the arbitrary exercise of authority. Meaning means purpose, activity that speaks to one's personal values, rituals, recognition and self-esteem. Growth means development, enrichment, expanding, and self-actualization. And lastly, joy is happiness, enjoyment, pleasure, and contentment. So those are the simple steps to well-being. I hope they may be useful to you as you move through life. You may also remember that I keep talking about bringing in other voices. Well, finally, I intend to introduce you to some of the new friends I've met on this journey so far. So stop back next week, meet some new faces with new stories, and dance on, my friends. Last week, I mentioned I wanted you to meet some of my new friends living with or working in the service of Alzheimer's disease. Let's start with Arthena Caston from Macon, Georgia. Arthena was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in 2016 at age 51.
My name is Arthena Caston. I'm married to Virus Caston. He is also former military, now managing a awesome furniture store. And the reason why I said that is because they've given me an opportunity to continue to work even after I had gotten diagnosed with early onset dementia. And that is why I think that my mind is still so actively busy, because I have a job. It's been interesting.
And when were you diagnosed, and
I
how
was
was that? How did
I
that
was
happen?
diagnosed in March of 2016, I think it was March of 2016. I had started having the problem with simple things, such as I would go to work. Well, the big thing was that one day I went to work, left my car running in the parking lot. Got off work that night and my battery was dead. I then knew something was wrong, but I had been having problems with it because the job that I did for a major insurance company for such a long time was very technical. And little things I had known from working with them at that point, 15 years, was becoming harder and harder for me to remember. And my husband kept saying to me, write it down, just write it down. And before I knew, I had yellow sticky notes all over my desk. I've always been a person that was able to talk to anybody, always been very good with customer service. And all of a sudden, it was getting harder and harder for me. Then lastly, I would cook dinner in the afternoon when I came home. I cooked dinner one day and made a whole pot of spaghetti and forgot all the hamburger. I really knew something was wrong then. But I just knew something was wrong with me because little things, as we get older, you forget your glasses. You can't find your glasses. You can't find your key ring. You can't, and this was, you just constantly think that's just a part of old age. Well, mine was a little more aggressive. I couldn't find things that I needed every day. I forgot to start taking medicines, things like that. And my husband kept saying, what's going on? But the day that I left my car running in the parking lot, it was just kind of the push over. But I was already at that point going to my doctors and saying, we have a problem.
Early onset Alzheimer's is a term used to describe people under the age of 65 diagnosed with the disease. It is rare, but Alzheimer's can even strike people in their 20s. As you will learn, Arthena is a remarkable woman. She's spoken all over the world and was elected to the National Board of the Alzheimer's Association. You'll be hearing a lot more from Arthena on the blog. And she looks like a dancer, don't you think? Gonna have to check up on that.